Hi, I received a wonderful letter today from a new fan named Kashka who had a great question. His question was, Aimee, how do you really get into the changes when you're soloing? I thought that was a great question. It brings up a lot of points. Different players play different ways, don't they? You can listen to any number of players and get different feelings about how they play just from listening to them. I listen to Miles Davis, for example, and I feel like he really has the melody in mind when he's playing. Like it's always present. Like he tries to bring it back. When I listen to Keith Jarrett play, I feel like it's this overarching scope of a solo that doesn't just embody the changes, but it embodies the entire scope of whatever he's trying to play. If he takes 8 choruses or whatever, that's what I feel like his whole solo is, you know? Like it's just this thing. And that's really cool. I listen to Bill Evans. I think about his harmonic prowess and how many neat notes he plays over which changes. I also think he's a very melodic player. But everybody kind of plays in a different way, right? I think of John Coltrane. I think of his amazing walls of sound and how he's able to create changes just with his saxophone. That's crazy. I think Charlie Parker paved the way for that. I think he did it in a very melodic way too, which is so cool. But outlining the changes is something that I think was really magnified by the bebop players. So, you know, there's a lot to think about when you think about how to really get into the changes. I'm going to tell you what I think, and it's kind of a compilation of everything that I've tried to learn from everybody and everything that I'm continually learning from everybody. But I want to tell you about the time that I really, for the first time in my life, got into the changes. It was on Autumn Leaves. And the first thing that I did was realize that I really liked a Bill Evans solo on Autumn Leaves. I really liked it. I thought it was beautiful. And there were a lot of parts of it that I wanted to learn. So I transcribed it, several choruses. That's the first thing I did. And then I decided that all I was going to do was play Autumn Leaves for weeks, for like a month. So I played the crap out of Autumn Leaves. I always played it. Every time I sat down to practice, that's what I practiced. And right from the beginning, I never looked at chord changes, and I didn't look at Bill Evans's solo for very long either. After I memorized it, I put it away. I tried not to look at anything except for I really wanted those chord changes to be internalized in my body so I didn't have to think of them anymore. And it was great. And to this day, Autumn Leaves, I never have to really think about. I can just play it, and I just hear where the changes are going, and I can play a beautiful melody. That's my goal always, to play a beautiful melody over the song. The next time I did it was with My Romance. And also, that was kind of crazy because My Romance is a little bit more difficult, isn't it? It has a lot more changes. It takes you through a couple different tonal centers. The reason I chose My Romance was because of a McCoy Tyner album that I had. What was it called? New York Sessions. Amazing, with Joe Henderson, Al Foster, Ron Carter. It's a great album. I loved his solo on that. So I transcribed it, and then I did nothing but practice My Romance. Not only in the practice room, but every time I walked somewhere or drove somewhere, I had it in my head. I was singing it. I was making sure that I was never going to forget those changes. It was kind of a double-edged sword for me because it, I remember waking up some mornings, and right when I opened my eyes, I would be in bar 17 or bar 18 of My Romance, and I knew that those changes had played in my head, in my dreams, the entire time I was sleeping, like on a loop that never ended. And that's an exhausting feeling, to wake up in the morning and realize that you've done nothing but practice in your sleep. It took me a while to get that one out of my head, actually. But I'll tell you what, ask me to play My Romance right now and I don't even have to think. It's in there. So I think that is the goal. That's how you really get into the changes, is that you play a tune so much that you never have to think, oh gosh, F sharp half diminished, and that's going to lead to an F minor 6. You know, you never are doing that because it's internalized within you, so that you don't even have to think about them. All you're doing is thinking about the beautiful melody that you're going to create. And that's always my goal. Why not give you a little example? I better, show you what I'm talking about, right? Let me just take my romance. Like I said, it's very comfortable to me. I have lots of tunes that are very comfortable to me now, but since I've been talking about that one, and since I know that it can illustrate my point, I'll just show you. Da, 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 da. 2, 3, 4. Do, 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 da, 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 do, da, da. Do, da, 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 do, 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 da. Ba, da, 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 boo, do, 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 do. Louis, boo, do, do, da, we, da, da, do, da. Do, da, do, do, da, do, do, do. Ba, da, we, da, da, do, do, do. Hey, da, da, ba, do, ya, do, 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 da, do, 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 da, 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 do, 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 da, dee, da, do, 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 boom, boom. Da, 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 do, 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 da, 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 do, 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 dee. Ba, boo, do, ba, do, 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 dee, da, boo, do, do, dee, do, da, boo, do, dee, do, da, boo, do, dee, do, da, do, do, dee, do, ah, do, do, dee, do, do, do. I didn't even have to think about what the changes were, not one time. All I did was just try to create a nice melody, like something that you could write down that might be the new melody to the song if you were to write another song that had the same changes, or something that somebody might want to transcribe. That's always my goal too. Always sing something that sounds like it means something, has some beauty to it. Might be something that could be written down, that someone might want to write down. I have another idea, a more practical idea that might be of some help. And it's something that I've actually done kind of recently, because a friend of mine and I were talking about the difficult changes to It's All Right With Me. They're not actually difficult changes. You get to the bridge and it's a series of diminished chords that just descend by half step. And he was saying, sometimes when I play that section, the only thing I can do, or the thing I think of to do in the moment, is to play some line over that first diminished chord and then just play it a half step lower, and then play it a half step lower, or play it a minor third higher, or 2 minor thirds higher, modulate it so that you play the exact same thing 3 times and it fits over those 3 different diminished chords. Does that make sense? And that's fine, and that's definitely one way of playing, and I do it sometimes. Like sometimes, especially if the tune isn't completely internalized, which it's not for me. I've been practicing that tune quite a bit since he and I talked about that day. But I wouldn't call it completely internalized yet. I still have to think about it quite hard. So what I did was I sat down and I tried to write a melody line that would take all 3 of those diminished chords and just go over the whole thing, and not necessarily outline each chord or remind you that we're even moving chords, but sound beautiful as those chords moved underneath. Does that make sense? Yeah, you want to sound beautiful while the chords move underneath. I think that's an important point. Let me show you how I did that. Took me a second to find it, but I found it. All right, you can see this is the key of G minor, so the bridge is going to start on a B diminished chord. This is the line that I wrote. You can see that it does sound really nice over B diminished. And then it gets to B flat diminished, this isn't the kind of thing that repeats 3 times, you know. It doesn't repeat here, and repeat here. It has a nice shape to it. It has some skips. It has a couple different rhythmic devices. Let's see how it sounds. One of the cool things about this part of the tune is that oftentimes you don't just play it with the descending diminished chords. You don't just, if you're with a band or whatever, it's not going to sound like a... like that. What usually happens is that the bass player picks either the B flat note or the F note and holds it like a pedal so that it sounds like... like that. So it kind of gives you license to play things over these diminished chords that you might not play otherwise, because not only are they a diminished chord, but they also have, you know, an extra note underneath them, which sounds really cool. All right, so let's see. I'll show you how this line sounds. Beboppy, right? It's totally beboppy sounding, but it's been helpful to me just to have that line. But that's not all I needed. In addition to this line, I've just gone through and played over these chords a bajillion times. Exact same thing will work. Mess around over the same chords over and over and over again until it doesn't feel like something you have to practice anymore, but it's just something that's beautiful to you. Yeah, and I don't know that I'm there yet. In all honesty, I still feel like I'm thinking quite a bit, but you can see my process. And sometimes you need to play less notes. I was playing quite a few notes right then. Sometimes you need to just rein it in. Whoa, Aimee. And say, could I just play like 6 or 7 notes and make it sound beautiful? And that's nice. And what are those notes and how do they work? It's a great process. It's a fun thing we do. Isn't it a fun thing we do? I love it. So Koshka, to return to your original question, how do you really get into the changes when you're playing? I think the answer is that you don't really get into the changes. You really get into the song, the piece, the whole form, the melody with the changes underneath it as one beautiful thing that you get, you internalize, becomes a part of you, and you don't have to think about it anymore. But it takes some time. I hope I've given you some examples so that you can see, you know, times in my life when I've really done it and how it affects the way that I improvise over that song, and times in my life when I'm working on it and I don't feel like I'm quite there yet, but that's how I do it. Oh, the last thing I'll share with you about it is if I'm really working on a song, I'll make myself a playlist of everybody who's ever recorded the song that's any good. And I'll just listen to it. I'll listen to the exact same song 20 times if I can. It's usually not that many times. It's hard to find recordings. You can use Spotify is a really good tool for that. YouTube's also a really good tool. Sometimes I use Apple Music. You just go in and you search for your song. You search for Autumn Leaves, and then you just pick anybody, you know, who's a legitimate jazz player or a legitimate standard singer, and just listen to it. You can learn all kinds of things just without even having to really think. If it's just playing in the background and you're listening to it a whole bunch of times, things are sinking in and you don't even realize it. So that's a really good idea. Just listen to every single recording you can of a tune, and that just sinks the tune deeply into your being, I guess, so that it just becomes a part of you. Okay, thanks so much for your great question, and I will see you next time on Aimee Nolte Music.